Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of EDM, electronic dance music. We're going to be checking out a group, an artist, honestly not sure, called Crystal Castles, I think. Yes. And the track is called Baptism. I didn't know which one was which. Had to double check that. Alright, so let's dive into this, see what's going on with Crystal Castles. Really a harsh transition into this. Really interesting length too. I have to double check that back around, if it comes back around, but I think that's 8.5 bars. At least it feels like we came back to this section interesting, or in a clean way. Yeah. Not 8.5 though. If I counted that right, it was 10.5. But still. Huh. Not what I was expecting. But I think that's primarily because it does a lot of stuff by not doing much of anything. Let's start from the beginning. It might be a good place to do so. We start off in what I think is the chorus, at least it's the spoken bit. It's I would say the part that's repeated most often, but I think it's fairly equal. It's very large. It takes up a lot of space, We have a huge muffled, again, just like yesterday, a muffled synth sound in the background. We have drums, 4 on the floor. I think that's the bass kick, but then we also have our bass synth on the offbeats, which is an interesting place to put it. It gives it this forward momentum, always trying to get to the next bit, but lacks the electricity in the sound and the timbre to really drive that home. It ends up feeling a bit lax despite the offbeat accents. We also have shouting that is further amplified through distortion and compression. That once again gives a bit of an energy that is betrayed by the feeling of the track. It's interesting that there's so many elements here that in most other settings would force the song to have a momentum that this doesn't. It ends up walking a line of, I don't know, opposing elements here. It feels like it wants to be driving towards the end of the track, but there's several elements that just want to be, they just want to exist. And of course, most of those driving elements are pulled back when we leave this section. The very wide synth in the background is removed. The vocals are gone. We shift down to, if I remember correctly, just the 4 on the floor bass kick and the offbeat accented bass synth, and we bring in this really nice glockenspiel style synth sound. And we get a nice little melody played on that, and that is our B section, pretty much in its entirety. The first time we run through it is different than the second. The second one feels more like a glockenspiel solo, whereas the first time feels closer to ambient sound. It kind of falls in line as more of a rhythmic instrument, if I remember correctly. Basically playing the same rhythmic pattern, repeatedly just changing pitches, whereas the second time around we get rhythmic and pitch changes, feeling more melodic. Now, the transition into this B section and the transition back out of it into our A once again are both abrupt. We just do it. We were doing this, now we're doing that. It feels very jarring for me every time it happens, not to mention that it happens in the middle of a bar. I never got around to checking if that continuation of the bar exists. Maybe it is beats 1 and 2 are the A section, beats 3 and 4 are the B section, but it's also quite likely that it's also just a bar of 2-4, where we have 2 beats for the A, and then we are on beat 1 into the B section. Regardless, it is just a jarring transition entirely. It comes at a time that is different from the general timing we expect. The entire song is in 4/4. We tend to expect changes on beat 1. On top of that, there is no lead in, there is no foreshadowing, there is no callback. We just have this big booming driving section and then a more ambient section, just back to back, with, as I mentioned, the drum and bass continuing to do the same thing they've been doing, just holding down that foundation. And if you focus entirely on that, the song never changes. It really is only the things above those 2 instruments that alter throughout this track. And so, that right there is the breakdown of the music, at least. We have the vocals and the semi-driving section, and then we have the ambient section, and then the driving section, and then the ambient section, and then a mixed section at the end, and then the song is over. We have explored every musical thing that goes on here, but as usual when it comes to electronic music, there's another component to this that is exceptionally important to the track itself, which is production. As I mentioned, the one synth in our A section is gone in our B section. It sits in the back and it is massive, but also kind of muffled. It does a great job of filling space and making the A section sound exceptionally large so that when it is missing, our B section feels ambient without it. It tells us how big the sound sphere is so that when it is missing, we can feel how empty the space is now. It's a really important aspect of the track, and I think that shifting towards that glockenspiel sound, which is very narrow and directed, it's a much smaller sound, having that lead the track also amplifies the sparseness of it. Choosing these timbres was no accident. It wasn't just throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck. It seems to my ear at least very intentional to amplify and augment the sparseness of the B section. I don't know if the song has lyrics. For all I know, this is a tweaked sample of something. Electronic music loves samples. Maybe it is original lyrics, but I'm curious if they have anything to tie into this idea of overwhelming largeness with that push and pull of drive and stagnation, or drive and lethargy. Lethargy is not the. It's a lack of wanting to move on. I don't think I have a word for that. Versus the drive, though, that exists in our A, and then the sparseness of the B. It feels very lonely, but it also feels accepting. The glockenspiel melody is, oh, it's not somber. It's bright. It's upbeat. We are alone, but we're cutting some shapes and we're having a good time doing it. What does all of that mean, though? What is it in the concept of baptism? Does the word baptism even come up in the screamed lyrics? I don't know what the song's supposed to mean, and again, like I said yesterday, maybe it's all just supposed to be dance music. Maybe there isn't some larger idea at hand. Maybe Crystal Castles just wanted to make an album of dance music in hopes that DJs would buy it to use in their clubs. I try not to look at music as cynically. Even some of the most capitalist, business-focused music, such as what the pop world tends to deal with, usually has an artistic element to it. Very rarely are there musicians who are purely in it for the money. I don't want to have that cynical view of electronic music, even if I still have a problem connecting with it. So, to me, there is a story being told here. I don't know exactly what it is, and I'm hoping the lyrics can expand a little bit on that. And with that, I suppose we should dive into the lyrics. As I read, the opening line is the chorus. Interestingly, they also section off the second half of the chorus, labeling it as the refrain, but these 8 lines are all that is in the track, and 2 of them are repeated. There's only 6 original lines here. Hold my breath underwater, take a breath for the Father, learn to love, lessons repeating, the chronicles are so misleading. This is your baptism, and you can't forgive them. And I think it is really interesting to use the visualization of the baptism, which, for those who aren't aware, very popular in the Christian religions, is to take somebody, dunk them under the water, and bring them back up. And this is supposed to represent the washing away of their sins, the cleansing of their body, so that they can further their relationship with God. I honestly don't remember. I was baptized when I was like 9, and I don't think I knew what it meant at the time, and to be honest, I still don't know the exact purpose of it. But yeah, the idea of holding my head underwater, right? So the concept of being put under the water and being brought back up, but the twisting this to holding my head underwater and forcing to take a breath for the Father, taking a breath of water, presumably, the idea of being suffocated, of being drowned by the religion. It says, learn to love, lessons repeating, the chronicles are so misleading. I take that to be that, the Bible says everybody should love one another. Love thy neighbor like thyself. But she sees the hypocrisy of the church. They preach one thing and act another. There is no love for thy neighbor in Christianity. There is just hatred. She says this is your baptism, and you can't forgive them. There's definitely some resentment for towards the church. At least to me, it seems that she does not have a healthy relationship with the church, and maybe even possibly religion as a whole. And she might have been in the same boat I was. Very young, didn't know any different, basically was, to use the term a little lightly, but also semi-seriously, is brainwashed. When you have no other concept of the world, except you've gone to church since as far as you can remember, it's truth, and you're never given an option to hear any different. So when they say it, most kids get baptized around this age, you say, okay, I guess that's what I gotta do. You don't really know what you're doing, and you can certainly feel resentment for that attempt for indoctrination. And it can certainly build distrust. And I think that's what this song is ultimately about. It's about a resentment for her religious upbringing, both of the church itself, possibly, and maybe even her parents who forced her to go, or whatever guardians forced her to go. So that would explain the muffled sound. Okay, so this kind of clicks, right? So our A section has that muffled synth in the background, and it's very overwhelming. It shows how big the sound sphere is, but it also shows how much weight is on our narrator. In fact, they're screaming but can barely be heard, very much like screaming underwater. And the sound being muffled is kind of like hearing music outside while you're underwater. Outside but above the water, This whole chorus feels like you're submerged. And when it clears away, we get this really nice, chill, carefree glockenspiel sound. There's clarity to everything. It's not a muffled sound anymore. There's serenity, there is isolation, but it's a positive isolation, as I spoke about earlier. This could be the freedom she feels breaking away from religion. The chorus is feeling overwhelmed by religion, and our B section is the freedom she has found after leaving. That's how I take this song, and I think it's really interesting that it's told through the means of dance music, constant four on the floor, always easy to bob your head to dance to move your body to. Yet, well, not yet, and it's a liberation song about finding yourself and breaking free of a weight that had pushed down on you and was, the walls were closing in and you found a way to escape that. Yeah, that's definitely a reason to celebrate, to dance. I dig it. Those are my thoughts on Crystal Castle's Baptism. What'd you guys think of this one? Let me know your thoughts, comments, perspectives, and opinions in the comments below. Above that, in the description box, is a link to Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here, has links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three. That wraps it up for right now. We still have a special selection coming up. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.